Underverse, the fan-made series made by animator Jael Penaloza. Recently, the premiere to Season 2 of Underverse was just released, called Episode 0.5. I made a reaction to this recently, where I garnered at the time 4.3 thousand views at the time of recording this, and is now my most popular video of all time. Anyhow, I gave a like goal of 10, then I made it 20, and then eventually 100, but who's counting? But the like goal's promise was for this video of an analysis to come out. So I guess you all are responsible for this. Anyways, here we go. We start off with the 10 timelines in the opening falling to Undertale, which we see become the beginning of Exhale versus Underverse showdown we see in this episode. As we see in this shot, we can tell that Undertale, Frisk, and Gaster are now still yet to have their showdown, and we will soon see X Omega Flower make his appearance. We also will see the Omega timeline this season, as we see Cross with Core Frisk being in this opening. Cross is also likely the last piece for Gaster to complete his army that he desires to take over the entire Undertale universe as the 10th timeline, and he may go after him soon, I'm predicting. I theorize Cross for some reason cannot have his personality overwritten anymore, but that reason remains to be seen. Or he could be using it for another unknown purpose, like I theorize taking over the Omega timeline. We also know that Air, who destroyed the multiverse, is still looking for the rest of the AUs and the Omega timeline. We also see Geno in the shot, along with Fatal Error appearing behind them, completely taking over the frames. This is probably the most important new character we will see this season. You may know that Fatal Error was created when Air attempted to kill Geno in the comics, but since it was impossible to kill him, they glitched together in a more powerful being with its only goal to recreate its brother, which was the goal of Geno. This leads him on a murderous rampage trying to steal code fragments from Papyrus to recreate the Undertale version of Papyrus, which Aftertale Sands comes from. He could very easily be the one who defeats Gaster in this series, I feel, because he probably cannot be overridden because his code is so glitched. He may be Gaster's weakness in my opinion. I think we will see him late this season where he defeats Gaster possibly, and become the new threat to the Underverse possibly. We also know that Nightmare and Killer still want to settle the score with Cross, so he will likely be hunting him. And I think we will see him in 0.6 trying to capture Cross in the Omega timeline. That's right, I think 0.6 will take place almost entirely in the Omega timeline. Because with exception to the intro of 0.0, we get a new universe in about every episode that we see. So I believe the Omega timeline is next. I also think that 0.6 will be longer than 0.5 because it may still include some Undertales if you haven't had a resolution for the main universe yet. But I think that will come at the very end of the series. When we see Killer Sans in this frame, I noticed finally that there was a purple stain on his knife, which is the color of the blood in Exhale. He likely tries to kill a character, and since he is with Nightmare, I am assuming it is Cross. Next we see Fresh, but this isn't Fresh Sans, this is Fresh Papyrus. Remember that Fresh is a parasite, he can go into anything he wants and take him over. Then of course we see behind him a little known AU called Fresh Ink. I'll talk about this more later. In the next shot we see Ink, who's in some sort of Kung Fu Panda-like blossom forest, maybe because his time has come. I don't know where this is, so let me know in the comments if you know where this place is in the AUs. Later in this intro, we see Sans walk into a forest, but has a reassuring look on his face that he may be okay. I'll talk about this more later as well. Then of course we have the save button in XR helping Undertale Frisk. With like Perseverance, like Ray Goldburn magic or something from Glitch Tale. We'll see about that. I think it's probably override magic that was left over. I will also talk about this more later in the end. But now here we are at the beginning of the actual episode, and we see it takes place right after Season 1 ends, with Sans teleported back to the Undertale universe right after 0.4 when Gaster takes him back. Here he is told he was gone for only hours, which confirms that Season 1 essentially happened in almost real time. And whether this means something or not, I do not know. In the next cut, Papyrus notices all the cuts, no pun intended, from the fight in 0.4 and 0.3, and even 0.2, and the dead monster dust on his jacket, not knowing where they are from, of course. I also want to appreciate the attention to detail Jael shows here. Most of the monsters are in blankets that you see from the Rain Squall, which also may represent a common motif in films, where everything seems to be down during rain, and it changes the cast perspective for the better. Usually, at least. Also, this next part is not a Fran ship. Please, I do not want to see 0.5 Fran's fan art, please. But here you see Sans is on the reflection of the heart locket that he was wearing from Season 1. And the heart locket, as you know, is a common motif as you see in X-Tales. Each timeline have a heart locket of their own given to them by the humans. Next up, we have Sans comparing the experience as just as terrifying and damaging to him as Frisk's genocide route. Sans proceeds to shove Frisk onto the closet, telling him they'll be stuck in the timeline cycle no matter what, and that promises don't matter, referencing Flowey in the Season 2 prologue, Owners. Frisk then reasons with Sans, telling him he refused to help and chose to go on his own, that he shouldn't have gotten involved anyways in other timelines' business. But little did Frisk know that was the problem that was arriving, the arrival of X-Tail with them as the last universe left. Then they reference Owners again by calling X-Gaster the new owner. He then proceeds to tell them everything he knows, and we cut to Frisk in a hallway that resembles Toriel and Asgore's houses. Here they communicate with Chara, and they affirm their beliefs by realizing in the danger ahead of them is X-Gaster, and X-Gaster enters a battle with Frisk in spirit. X-Gaster introduces himself, referencing an incident that made the timeline's traits very special, which you can assume would be the Owner's incident with the genocide route, which brings me to believe that killing Sans would set him back, and he couldn't afford to eliminate him because of the timeline ending possibly. But I am not sure, because maybe Frisk is the owner of the timeline now that Sans is reset. Especially since Frisk has the save button still, which means they still are the main character of this story. X-Gaster is very interested in Frisk's powers and offers him to come with. This brings me into how similar this story is to Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. And I think it holds true that X-Gaster is just like Thanos, a perfectionist with one goal in mind. He even suggests against his core beliefs to coexist, saying it is the only imperfection he is willing to accept. Frisk then denies the obscure offer and affirms X-Gaster's belief that perfection is the only success that he can achieve. He may want to take over the Undertow cast and bend the world to his will is my theory, making him the ruler of a perfect story. Here we see Ink revitalizing his emotions with his vials, and he continues to show his chaotic neutral personality as he is only in for this for the story. X-Char then attacks Ink after being reminded when he was a dwarf, where he is then stopped by his emo brother who appears to be under X-Gaster's control. I'm also not sure why, but he's holding the locket in his hand with the knife. Probably not too important though. Ink proceeds to ask what plan B is, and X-Gaster slows time down and affirms that his plans never change. He then speaks through the monsters, but this gives me a theory. He first says they in this phrase. He first says they just gave me a reason to work in complete confidence, which makes me believe that he was also talking to UT Frisk at the same time. Then the monsters, through X-Gaster, by order of timeline, are quoted saying, "Civilized conversations are pointless. A world with such inequality cannot be shared with the ignorant. Otherwise, it would never be something perfect. I will play by my own rules. With or without them, there is no stopping this. The resources this universe offers will be a waste no more, and only those who are truly worth living will stay. This is the match point for eternity. This is reality." We then see a hilarious cutscene with Ink throwing up from excitement and find something he wrote earlier, proceeding to ask X-Gaster for him to make him a gift. While he doesn't say anything about what it is or who he's giving it to, we can see written on his scarf is a pair of sunglasses next to a gift. Is a pair of sunglasses next to the gift. And who wears sunglasses? Fresh does. I believe we will see Fresh, whether it is in his Papyrus or Sans form, in the next couple episodes, which I do believe will result in Fresh Ink being created. There is also the possibility of it being epic, but I think he will show up in 1.16 with Cross instead, since they are considered best friends, and Jackie seems to canonize that. Now back to the episode at hand. X-Gaster says to X-Char that he is the entertainment for him, as he finds his frustration enjoyable, which he claims is why his consciousness is still intact. But I theorize that he could be lying here. that his recent use of the override ability, proving he can use it without NyxTheShield's soul, makes it impossible for him to be controlled, and he's beyond NyxTheShield's true control. And since NyxTheShield, the perfectionist, he likely would control him if he had the chance. We then change acts in this episode, where Mettaton tries to broadcast Muffet's bakery, advertising his own merch at her bakery. This is followed by the camera exploding and an apparent earthquake. They also blow up portions of the streets and buildings, as ex-Muffet is shown webbing people up, as ex-Mettaton, in a Jedi fashion, uses their laser sword to take their souls and, in an Among Us style, eats it. They ended up meeting their Undertale counterparts, unintentionally apparently, and Exo begins to corrupt the city, represented by purple windows. Mettaton believes he can beat them on his own, and someone created a counterpart to sabotage his brand. He attempts to blow up the two, but is completely unsuccessful. Ex-Mettaton then says before the fight he promises one of us will remain, but in less visible text below it, saying, "Please forgive me." And then next, Muffet says, "And it won't be you," but below it in less visible text says, "Help us." This is proof that NyxTheShield is in fact speaking through them and controlling them, but they still have some consciousness left. The fight then begins as ex-Muffet's theme called Insurrection plays, which means a violent uprising against an authority and or government. This likely refers to X-Tale 4, where she gets X-Chara to rebel against NyxTheShield. That was a lot of X's, I said. Even more X's than Texas. Wow. Anyways, terrible joke. Here he proceeds to punch him in the stomach, and this, in my opinion, could apply to the future, and I think ex-Muffet will be rising up to NyxTheShield as one of the first to leave the control. The final part of this quick fight scene has Muffet stop time in a very Dio-like fashion from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where she counts down with her fingers to bring time back to normal speed, and immediately Mettaton is hurt and wrapped up along with Muffet and her pet, suggesting they weren't killed. And for those who think MTT can die because they are a ghost, they can, sadly, because they give immortality for the body. First, I want to say this is a very glitch tail fashion kind of season right now. Season 2 for Underverse is a lot like Season 2 for Glitch Tail, just gonna say. Anyhow, the Undertale cast then rushed to Papyrus's car to head to the city. The episode then finishes its lines with NyxTheShield comparing himself to Frisk with their decisions. Then, of course, the episode ends with Sans far from the city, turned away from the battle, eating his favorite ketchup-covered fries. I know they probably are his favorite because they are Grillbees, and the reason I know that because the original storyboard has Sans and Grillbees eating there to end the episode, but they decided to have a fight scene instead, so he has to leave the city. Then we have the end credits, which is assumed to be Ink talking, where he longs to be free and never forgotten, and that all the memories he created were his past self, and they are to sacrifice this for what he hopes to be his best life. I think this song has a lot of meaning to it overall, and I am very, very excited to see what Ink is going to be doing in the next few episodes. But we just have to be patient and wait and see. In this shot, we see Ink staring at the torn up multiverse and NyxTheShield's outline shadowing him, showing that he relies on him now. On to the predictions for the future. I get a feeling that Ink wants a soul from NyxTheShield once he can perfect its properties. I really think that he wants the soul. He's complaining about how he can't really feel anything, and none of his emotions are on his own. And he's just wasting away his time. He's just wasting away for his life. He wants to have a reason to live. And I do believe the gift that he received will be given to Fresh, likely in papyrus form, to create fresh ink, in a Sans form of course. I believe this morph may happen in an extra scene, but maybe 0.6 is the earliest we will see it happen. 0.6 I think will take place mostly in the Omega timeline, where Nightmare will be hunting for Cross for revenge and negative feelings. We may even see Error searching for them because he is obviously the last big target that was originally on his list. I can imagine, at least. If they continue on this endgame arc, we may end up seeing the Omega timeline come to Undertale's defense. But maybe even NyxTheShield kept Cross there, so he could take control of the Omega timeline whenever he pleases. Only time will tell. But I think that the Omega timeline will play a very large role here. Epic, I think, will show up near the end of 0.6, hopefully, because of his friendship with Cross in the X-Tail Epic Tail crossovers that Jackie seems to consider canon. If not, I am sure he will be in 0.7. Epic could also be a refugee, as Epic Tail was possibly destroyed in the Multiverse Destruction, as many other monsters from Era's Multiverse Destruction. I believe the true Undertow vs. Xtail battle won't happen until 0.8 or later, as Frisk will attempt to save those who are controlled by Gaster, and even Gaster himself, because as we know, this is the pacifist Frisk. We will also see Geno and Error Tangle soon, pun intended. I think that will happen later in the series as well. And as for Undertow Gaster, I think he will also be teamed up with Epic Gaster at some point, hopefully, as Jackie keeps suggesting that in some sketches that she has been posting in the last year. Thank you all for watching my predictions, and I hope you all enjoyed. Please consider subscribing and commenting what you think, and I'll see you all next time.